Welcome to Life Her Podcast, the podcast that guides you from the 9 to 5 grind to the freedom of your own path. Discover how to conquer life's challenges while pursuing your passions with unwavering faith. Because being an entrepreneur is not easy. So let's get to it.
Hey everyone, I'm Yvette Lloyd, host of Life Her Podcast. We have an amazing guest today, and it's Sammy Bohannon, and she is the founder of Bohannon Virtual Solutions. Sammy is a dedicated online business manager with a powerful story of resilience and transformation from starting out as a teacher to becoming a successful entrepreneur. She is navigating life's ups and downs, building and thriving a business while balancing the roles of homeschool mom and business owner. Sammy's journey is virtual assistant to OBM, her experience with mental health, and her commitment to her core values like accountability, transparency, and integrity, and truly inspiring for everyone to just listen to her amazing story. So get ready to learn from her insights in building values, divine and driven business, managing life with ADHD, and overcoming generational obstacles to create a life of that she's proud of. Let's dive in. Hey Sammy, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How's your day going?
It has been busy but productive.
I understand that for sure. So we're just gonna get right into it. You began your career as a teacher and later transitioned into entrepreneurship after leaving the educational field. What is and what was it about you teaching environment and led you to be dedicated in a big career shift?
Yeah, so my mom was a teacher and I grew up a teacher's kid. I knew what it was like. I never really wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't know what other career options were available for me out there. And one summer, I volunteered helping migrant students to learn to speak English, and I kind of fell in love with doing that, helping them to learn English. So that's what I pursued, and I went ahead with it because I didn't know what else I wanted to do. And I went into the field and I taught English as a second language for 6 years. And the whole time I knew it wasn't going to be my end game. I knew that it just wasn't for me. And part of it, I had a rough time as a teacher. In my first scenario, I experienced bullying from my mentor teacher. And
Wow.
then I, yeah, and then I experienced something similar from a principal at a different school. And then eventually, I didn't leave teaching on my own terms. I was non-renewed after taking FMLA for my mental health. And I decided at that point, like, I can't do this anymore. They are not here for me. They're not going to do what it takes to support me. So I have to do something else. And that's really when I decided I was going to make the shift and just work from home. My mom had a friend at the time who also had a similar background as far as what she taught as I did, and she gave me a lot of resources to start my own tutoring business. So that's what I started out doing. And so I went that route because, it kind of makes sense, teacher, tutoring business. Um, and I decided to go that route. And that didn't work out. I'm from rural Kentucky. Um, there's not a lot of emphasis placed on education necessarily. And even the people who do value education, there's just not a lot of money. So it was very difficult for me to make any money as an entrepreneur who was teaching with a master's degree in education. I just couldn't make the money. So I had to figure something else out that was going to be able to pay the bills.
Wow. So, first, I want to say I apologize for you to be getting bullied in the workforce. That is really serious and traumatic, and it oh man, I know it had to take a toll on you for even experiencing something like that and being in the workspace. Do you feel guarded in a sense from when you was going through that and then you transitioning over?
Yes. I don't know how many of your listeners have been teachers before. It is a very difficult profession. It is I was a good teacher, and I don't say that lightly. I was a good teacher. I had the test scores and the data to back it up. But I was never good enough. It was always, you have to do something better. And not just the person who bullied me, but just from everybody. It was, you always have to do something better. There's always something to grow on. It's never, hey, you did a good job. We should celebrate. No, it's what can we do better next time? How can we move forward? How can we be better? And it took me a long time to be able to accept a compliment.
Mm.
I've been out of education for about 4 years now, and it took me probably 2 years to be able to accept a compliment on my work and be able to be like, oh, well, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. And instead of feeling like that's not true, you're just saying that. I mean,
Mm.
I didn't know how to take a compliment.
Wow. I'm so sorry to hear that, but I'm glad you found your path, your way to even get out of something like that, because I don't think people really realize how much they be hurting individuals with their words and their actions and how it affect us. Cause you saying 2 years, sometimes it takes someone never to get through that. So I'm really glad that you end up shifting into something else to better your mental health for sure.
Yeah, and I think about the teachers who were in it for longer than I was. I was a teacher for 6, 7 years. The people who were in there longer than I am, they have a lot more work to do when they leave than I did. So it's very traumatic in some ways to be a teacher right now.
Oh, well, can you tell us more about the emotional and practical challenges of you starting your own tutoring business and then pivoting to a VA and OBM role?
Yeah. So when I started my tutoring business, kind of the it was driven by, I have to do something to make money. And this is what I know. I know teaching. And I found that even though I was charging premium rates, it didn't really equate out to very much because of the amount of time I spent planning. I spent so much time planning, and I had two little kids at the time. This was in 2021, I think. And my kids were 3 or 4. So trying to be the stay-at-home mom, taking care of two little kids and running this business that was just taking everything out of me, um, it was a lot of work. And then in May of 2022, the few clients I had, maybe 6 students. The 6 students I did have, they graduated out of my program. They either aged out or they were doing so much better that there really was nothing more I could do to help them. So I lost all my students at once, and I
Wow.
had to make a pivot. I literally Googled, what can former teachers do to make money online? Because, this was around COVID, post COVID, and daycare was getting so expensive. I had to be home with my kids. So I was trying to find something I could do online, and I came across virtual assisting. And then a friend of mine who had also done the same tutor training program I did had moved into virtual assisting and said, hey, Sammy, I think you'd be good at this. You're really good at setting things up. You're good at the social media. You're good at, making sure everything's organized. Why don't you try this out? And that's how I got into virtual assisting. I didn't think it would really be something that I moved into. I didn't think it was going to become what it's become for me, but I'm so glad that it did. And it has been just amazing for me and my family. And it was just something that kind of fell into my lap.
Wow. Well, I'm glad it did because everyone looks for that outlet. Your story sounds so similar to some people that go through things in corporate and then they shift over and start their own. And I think it's like so amazing how everyone is finding their peace, their space. And I'm very, very happy that you end up finding your space because everyone deserves that.
I agree 100%, and I really appreciate it. It has been like a weight lifted off my shoulders not to have to go to work and be afraid afraid of what's going to happen today, or what terrible thing am I going to have to be, exposed to.
Right. And what's so cool about even this next question I have is like, what lessons from your teaching background have influenced how you run your business and interact with clients?
I think the biggest thing is I was an English as a second language teacher.
Mhm.
And it really, working with people who are completely different from you really makes you have an open mind to what people are like. And like I said, I come from rural Kentucky, very conservative, very closed-minded. And I have a different perspective on other people and other religions and other languages than most people I know because of it. And so I think that I've been able to put myself in other people's shoes in ways that a lot of people I know can't, because I have worked so extensively with kids who've seen things I could never imagine.
Mm. So you started as a VA and eventually recognized you were doing the work of an OBM. Can you break down the difference between the two roles and what led you to fully embrace the OBM path?
Yeah, so a VA is more of, I guess, more of an implementer. They do the task. They're doers. And then OBMs, it's more of a, I don't want to say holistic, but it's more of an big picture sort of thing. So instead of making sure that the invoices are sent, I mean, I do some of that, but instead of making sure each little invoice is sent and paying close attention to the little bitty details, we look more at the bigger details and think about, well, how are we going to make sure that the team works together, and how are we going to make sure that we continue moving forward, and how are we going to break this project that we have coming up into smaller pieces. So the OBM just kind of does more of the big picture stuff. And I realized that I was really doing the work of an OBM for many of my clients. I would I would I would talk to them about what a typical VA did, and they would tell me what their previous VAs did, and then I did so much more. And when I first started, I didn't know what an OBM was. I mean, I'll be honest about that. I didn't know. And then as I started learning more and realizing that I was doing more than other VAs I knew, and I was doing things like creating systems and processes and helping plan the actual business and make goals with the business owner. The VAs don't do that. And I realized that I had a much bigger role in the businesses that I was working with than just being a VA.
Wow. So, to clarify, as my listeners, as you guys continue to listen, I wanted to let you guys know VA is virtual assistant and OBM is um online business manager. So that's a difference, just in case if you guys are trying to gather everything. And Sammy, for those that's thinking about moving from VA to OBM role, what skills or experiences would you say are essential for success?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest one is project management.
Mm,
There are project management VAs, but being able to move a project and manage a team at the same time and assign the different pieces to the team members is one of the really big skills that I have needed, and being able to follow up with everybody. And the other thing is just communicating with the team in a positive manner. And a lot of people are quick to blame and quick to not ask questions. They're quick to point fingers instead of trying to figure out what happened or what we can do differently. It's so just making sure that you have open and clear communication with the people you're working with. I mean, you can learn how to use the technology, but it's kind of hard to learn how to talk to other people if that's not something you've put the work in.
oh wow. So you have some core values, and they are always be transparent, act with integrity, clients come first, and there is always something new to learn. What inspired you to come up with those different core values, and how do you implement them? Because I know accountability and transparency is like everything, especially when you in this field.
I think the accountability comes from just, I guess, my upbringing.
Mhm.
One thing I cannot stand is someone who lies. And that has to do a lot with my experience as a child and being lied to about things that were happening because people thought I wasn't old enough to understand. Um, and I didn't take it very well. And so as I've gotten older, I feel like it's important to be open and honest about everything. And so for me, being accountable means that if I make a mistake, I own up to it. And I mistakes happen. I'm human. I mean, if you want someone who's perfect, it's not me. But if you want someone who's going to say, "Hey, I made this mistake and this is how I'm going to fix it," then I've got you. Like that is what's big for me is being aware of the mistakes I made and then figuring out a way to fix it. I'm constantly telling my kids, don't come to me with a problem unless you have a suggested solution. We solve problems, we don't create them.
Mhm.
And then transparency is very similar. I don't want to take on clients and I don't want clients to bring me on who we don't we don't agree on things or we don't see things eye to eye or I think it's important not to hide things from each other because if we're not open and honest about what's going on, there's really not a good way forward.
Yes, that
And
is
again, I
so
think that
true.
comes from my upbringing and just things that happened in my childhood.
Wow. So, being transparent, can you explain how much it actually helps you to help the clients a lot better within their business or their needs of you being their OBM?
Yeah, of course. So, one thing is that a lot of people have found if they worked with someone before me, that some people are afraid to tell them places where things aren't going well. And that doesn't help anybody. So, I'm not rude about things and I'm not degrading, but if I see something that's not really working very well, I'll bring it up and say, "Hey, maybe we should try this or we should try that. Let's see how this works. You know, are you open to this idea?" And just being able to point out things that aren't going as smoothly as they could be, or if there's something that I see that maybe they don't see, and just bringing it up. And sometimes they're tough conversations. So, for example, one of my clients and I had to talk about how we were spending too much money on a team member and how we had to make some changes because we were over budget and those kinds of things, and they're hard conversations. And I mean, it's not easy to have, but it's something that has to be done.
Mm. So, a lot of people, everyone knows what you do for a living, but could you be more detailed on exactly the services that you provide so that they may need it as well? Because I personally, once I figured out about virtual assistant and online business management, it is a game changer. It really is, because it's just the fact of you actually having the help that you need, and they technically don't have to be present with you. You don't have to get a fancy office or anything to be able to like manage things the way you want to. But a lot of people are afraid to receive help because they doing all the work, they're getting themselves burnt out, and they don't know exactly who to turn to cover a lot of bases within their business to take the the weight off of them. So could you explain to the services you provide so that they could be consider your services?
I can try. It's really difficult to do because I do a lot.
Wow.
I was on a call with someone the other day who asked the same question, and the list went on and on. So, some of the things I do, a huge one is project management and making sure that, projects get follow followed through. That doesn't sound right, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
That we follow through with projects. So for example, one of the clients that I'm working with, we just created a course and we had to map out the whole thing. Like, where are we going to start? Where are we going to end? Like, the start is, this is where we are now, and the end is getting it out to customers. And so mapping that kind of thing out and then implementing it, actually doing it, and setting things up. So everything that went along with that, I kind of did. I do a lot of invoicing and I do a lot of maintaining budgets. I do a lot in QuickBooks for some clients. I
Mm.
do a lot. I personally do a lot of email marketing. Not everybody does, but I personally do a lot of email marketing. I write people's emails, I send them out, I schedule them, I set up all the automations. Um, and then automations is also a really big thing, especially for an OBM, setting up the automations. That's really something I do a lot of. I've used Zapier and Make to set up automations in CRMs like Honeybook, Dubsado, Go High Level, those sort of things. Um, and then I also do kind of client management. So handling an inbox where my clients are talking to me and I take care of whatever they need. Do they need a refund? Do they need access to their course? Or do they need access to a digital product? Or do they need to schedule a different appointment? Or do they need to make a change? Or just kind of whatever comes up. And yeah, that's really a lot of it. And then following up with teams is really a big part of what I do as well. Making sure that everyone feels supported and has what they need to do their role and do it effectively. And then doing weekly check ins and sometimes daily check ins, depending on what we're working on, just to see where everyone's at, what kind of progress is being made. Do we see anything happening that might keep someone else from being able to do their work? And just keeping everyone informed and in the loop. That those are, I guess, the main things that I do. But overall, it's really just a little bit of everything.
Girl, you do everything. Shoot,
I do everything.
so tell me, out of all the things that you do, what do you love doing the most?
I like see, I really struggle with this question anytime anyone asks me, and I really need to because you're not the first person to ask me. I need to have a
Really?
good answer. But I mean, I guess because I come from such a stressful background, everything just feels so wonderful here. So I guess what I like doing the most is kind of the organizational pieces, like finding out who needs to do what and making sure everything fits together. I really enjoy that. I'm a very type A kind of person. So
Okay.
seeing how everything's going to work and flow, and then figuring out the challenges as they come up. I really enjoy a challenge. So as they come up, I like putting out the fires and figuring things out.
That's so cool. So, you were diagnosed with ADHD at 28. How did this diagnosis change your self perspective, your self concept of like approaching to both life and business?
Yeah, it changed a lot actually. I if I'm looking back, I can see the signs of it as early as middle school, but I was a high achiever, so no one ever thought anything. I wasn't hyperactive, and it presents differently in girls and women than it does in boys, and so it gets missed very often. And for me, it presents a lot as anxiety. And it just, once I'm on medication for it. And once I started taking medication for it, the focus and the clarity, like I have no idea how I made straight A's in high school without the medication. I just have no idea. I don't know how I graduated with honors. I don't know how I did any of those things that I did without the help that I have now.
So, many entrepreneurs struggle with mental health. Can you share some of the strategies that have helped you manage mental health challenges while balancing a business and family life?
Yes. So, the biggest thing that people seem to be like, oh, wow, when I tell them is that we do not keep a strict schedule. I have meetings with clients a couple times a week. I try to keep them on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And other than that, I do not keep a strict schedule because that is not how my brain works. I might wake up and I might feel depressed, or I might wake up
Wow.
and I can't think. And so I'm like, hey kids, let's go for a walk. Let's go. We have like a rundown mall in our town that people walk in. I'm like, let's go to the mall. Let's walk around. Let's do something. Let's go to the park this morning. Because when I'm like that, I need to be out of the house. I can't be sitting at the computer all day.
Mm.
So the biggest thing for me is being flexible. And luckily, most of the work I do doesn't have to be done at a certain time. It can be done when it gets done. Um, so that is a little bit of a privilege that I do have, but I've created my schedule to work that way. And I homeschool my kids, so we don't set a set schedule. It's kind of when we have time that day, we do it, and we're very
Mm.
flexible. And that's kind of the biggest thing. And then setting reminders for things. We are obsessed with our Alexa. Um, she's amazing, and she reminds us to do things so that I don't forget. She reminds me to feed my kids because otherwise I would forget to feed them lunch. Like that sounds like a terrible parent, but like I just that's just how it is. She reminds us to brush our teeth. She reminds us to drink enough water. She reminds us to take a break and go outside. So the Alexa has been super amazing.
You've overcome challenges related to poverty and breaking generational curses. How have that experience shaped your mindset and being an entrepreneur?
Yes. So my mom was the first person in her family to graduate high school and go to college. Uh, she didn't go to college until I was probably kindergarten. Um, and she's a teacher now, but she didn't start until I was in third grade because she was a single mom. She was a single mom with two kids. And, it's really difficult. I remember that we were on food stamps, and I remember one Christmas when my mom told us that, hey, I just want to let you know that someone else bought your Christmas gifts this year. And because I didn't have the money, and that's one of my earlier memories. And so that's something that I think about often because of where I am today. I feel like I have to work harder to get out of there and out of that mindset. Um, because my dad's family never made it out. And learning to raise my prices has been very difficult for me because
Mm.
I feel like it would be things that I would never be able to afford. And so that has been something I've had to do a lot of work on, is
Right.
charging what my services are worth, and not taking it personally when people tell me it's too expensive, and not taking it personally when other people have told me that I don't charge enough. Just money is something that's always been very difficult for me to talk about because of how I grew up. And that definitely translates into my business. I just realized earlier I've been giving away something for free that I definitely should be charging for. Um, so that is something that definitely has been an issue for me as I have built the business and moved through everything. Um, yeah, and it's also been a driver, I guess. I know what extreme poverty looks like, and I don't want to be there. I don't want to be there.
Wow.
So it's kind of a motivator to keep me going and putting myself out there because I'm actually a very timid person, and doing things like this terrifies me. But I'm like, I have to put myself out there. I have to show my face. I have to make the reels. I have to, I have to be out there. People want to see me. Um, and it keeps me going because I don't want my kids to know what it's like, or, to wonder what it's like to not have my dad. My parents were never married, but we'd go to my dad's house and he wouldn't have electricity, and he
Aw.
couldn't pay his bills. So I mean, I don't want my kids to know what that's like.
Yeah. Wow. So what motivates you to like keep pressing forward when you face like things with difficult circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, mostly it's just making a better life for my kids than I had, and trying to be better than I was yesterday. I have a lot of intrinsic motivation and motivation from inside myself to be better than I was before. And I think that comes from just always wanting and knowing that I had to work twice as hard as everyone else because I didn't have a leg up. I didn't have family to help me pay for college. I had to get a full ride scholarship. I didn't have, I didn't have people help me start my business. I had to figure it out on my own. Um, and I mean, even though my mom has a good job now, she still doesn't, teaching doesn't pay enough for her to help me with things. So, and she's helped me a lot. I'm not saying that she has helped me a lot as much as she can. But just having to work a little harder for things, and um, wanting my kids to have more than I had.
Wow. So what advice would you give to someone in a toxic job situation who's thinking of transitioning into entrepreneurship?
The first thing is make sure you understand that it is kind of lonely, and it is hard to find people you can trust to lean on, which is also true in a toxic work environment. But just because you start working for yourself, it doesn't all go away. So you have to be willing to put in the work to make those changes, and to be different, and to see differences.
That is so true. I mean, very lonely too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Until you actually meet someone that's relatable, it don't become so lonely, but it's like at the same time, like the way you feel, I used to feel that way. And I'm like an introvert. So until we come out of that introvert phase and then we start to meet people that's going in the same direction as us and doing the same things. And it's like, oh, I'm not alone. I am okay.
yes, yes.
so so for people in similar life situations or with ADHD, what are some practical steps they can take into turn as far as struggling and strengths in the business?
As far as struggling with the stress, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
For 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 people in similar life situations or with ADHD, what are some of the practical steps they can take turn their struggles into strengths in business?
Yes. So I think that, especially with the ADHD, one thing that makes me better as a business owner is that I crave new experiences. And as I've learned more, like I didn't have ADHD. Well, I mean, I didn't know I had ADHD until I was older. So I've learned a lot about it over the past few years, and the last 4 or 5 years. And that's a huge thing, is that people with ADHD want new things. They always need something new and something exciting. And so, while that is on one hand a really good thing because you're always ready to grow and change, on another hand, it can be a bad thing because you can follow the wrong path. I've done that. So just making sure that you know that you are following the right thing, and so it is always changing, and that is very, very helpful for entrepreneurs who have ADHD, because it's not sitting still. It's not doing the same thing over and over. It's not really all that repetitive, because you're always trying to find a way to do something new and something different.
Okay. Looking back on your journey, what would you say has been your proudest moment so far as an entrepreneur?
So, about 6, 7 months after I started my VA business, which then turned into the OBM business, I was able to bring on my sister, and she works for me about 5 hours a week, which isn't a whole lot, but she, when I first brought her on, she had lost her job, and she was pregnant, and she needed something, and she didn't want to work a whole lot of hours because the plan was for her to stay home and be with the baby. And so I am able to provide her with at least some sort of income. And so that really has made me feel like I'm contributing and doing great things. And we're hoping to continue to grow that. Her son is 2 now. So we're hoping as he gets a little more independent, she can take on more things. Um, but yeah, that was really a pretty great moment for us.
Wow. So can you please let people know how they can utilize your services and your website and information to be able to contact you?
Yeah, so my website is bohannonvirtualsolutions.com. And there are lots of different ways that I work with people. So one way is with my OBM services, and they start at $1,200 a month. And then I also do email marketing sequences where I'll write your email marketing like welcome sequence for a product or a service that you have, and I do that for $150. And then I also do project management setups where I will set you up in Asana or Trello, or whatever project management system that you're using, so that you have a foundation and you can get started. And those vary based on the system and what you need. But those are all on my website under services. And then I also offer a free business audit. This is the thing that I probably should be charging for, but it's free for now and probably forever. But basically, you just fill out a Google form and tell me about your business, and I'll take a look at it and tell you where you can either delegate tasks to someone else. So I'll tell you what things that somebody else can do for you, or I will, and I will tell you some things that you can automate to make things a little better. So actually, just before this, I was doing one of them, and someone was saying they were using a booking system that just really wasn't working. So I'm giving her some ideas of different booking systems that integrate with her website. So hopefully that's pretty helpful for her, because what she's using is not working. So that's I do that for free, and I'll send you a video and a little write-up of my recommendations.
Wow. I am so proud of you, Sam.
Oh, thank you.
I am. I am really proud of you. I just love how people start to like tap into themselves. And I don't think people really understand a lot of the things that we go through in our personal lives before our business life, and even the transition on how difficult it is in our slow seasons, and just battling life overall, and for us to just keep going, because a lot of times people see the amazing things you do on social media, but they have no idea of your personal life and the personal things that you go through. And one thing I can say, you are wearing it well, and you are doing an amazing job.
Oh, thank you. You don't know how much that means.
You're welcome. You are so welcome. So no, I thank you so much for being on my podcast show, and I appreciate you a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for tuning in to Life Her podcast. I hope you guys subscribe on our YouTube channel, and also listen to Life Her podcast on all major platforms and listen to it audio. Thank you.
Welcome to Life Her Podcast, the podcast that guides you from the 9 to 5 grind to the freedom of your own path. Discover how to conquer life's challenges while pursuing your passions with unwavering faith. Because being an entrepreneur is not easy. So let's get to it.